So twofold, just points I want to make. Statistically speaking, just from Social Security's own stats, your best chance of winning is in front of a judge. Just that's where the majority of cases are actually won. You don't get in front of a judge if you just keep reapplying, because all you'll ever get is that agent, because it's a new application. Social Security wants to make sure that the way you're living your life is consistent with all the reasons you say you can't work. So if you say, hey, look, I can't leave my house because I have my PTSD and my anxiety is so severe, I can't leave my house. But then you're leaving your house even for 2 to 3 hours a week to go volunteer, that's going to raise an eyebrow, right? If you say, I can't lift more than 1 pound, and yet you have a 10-pound baby and you're required to lift that baby, of course, right? The judge is going to ask you about it. So just make sure that the way you live your life is consistent with all the reasons you're telling Social Security you can't work, or reevaluate all the reasons, and that probably leads to the next topic, which is our number, I think at this time, number 5 reason, which is, and I'll let you answer it.
Yeah. Being consistent with when talking about your symptoms and severe impairments, making sure not to exaggerate or downplay your symptoms. Very related to what you're saying. If you say, I can't lift anything at all, this was a really big thing in-person hearings. You say, like, I can't lift anything, or I can't lift anything more than 5 pounds, and then the judge sees that you pick up the pitcher of water that they leave on the table and pour yourself a glass of water, or you say, I can't push any amount of weight, but then the judge sees you pushing the door to the hearing room open, or pulling it open. They can use that against you as a sign that you're not credible. And so being consistent, not exaggerating, not downplaying. A good Social Security law firm like ours can talk to you. If you're concerned, it's like, are my symptoms disabling? We can talk to you about that. We can provide legal advice. As long as you're being honest with us, and we recommend as well being honest with Social Security is the best policy.
I 100% agreement with you. Just when you're communicating what's going on with Social Security, try to be as specific as you can and hit the nail on the head. And a lot of times, and I kind of talked about this with Judge Hyatt, is we so often communicate in a way that is exaggerated, in a sense that that's how we do day to day, right? And we do that because we're trying to emphasize how important it is to us. So it's like, oh, I can't lift anything, right? Well, that language, I can't lift anything, is used because you want to let the person know that you're talking to how hard it is to lift. But if you think about the definitions of the words coming out of your mouth, I can't lift anything means you can't lift a pen. You can't lift a piece of paper, right? And so that's where if everything that the judge is trying to figure out is, are you credible? Even though you may not be like intentionally lying, because I don't think people really generally do that right? But it's more about like the way you communicate, the style of communication, which we all, and here I'm doing it now. We all do it, right? But it's common on the things we want to emphasize to exaggerate. And it's also common that people will downplay, like going to the doctor. How you feeling? Oh, I'm okay.
Yeah.
And you, I'm okay. It reads much differently than his body language, tone of voice doesn't get picked up for a medical record.
Right.
So, and so treat the way you communicate in that piece of advice. Don't exaggerate and don't underplay what's going on with you. Try to hit the nail on the head. That doesn't just apply with Social Security, but I think that also applies with your doctor.
Yeah, 100% agree.
So, what is number 6 on our list, which is understanding the date you became disabled, as well as your date last insured in disability cases. You want to tackle this? Because I know I added it on, or do you want me to tackle it?
No, I'm happy to run through it, and then please offer your thoughts.
Sure.
So in Title II cases, which are most commonly called SSDI, standing for Social Security Disability Insurance, you'll also see the acronym DIB, which stands for Disability Insurance Benefits. This is the disability program under Social Security for folks who have paid into the system because they have worked and paid Social Security taxes, and you have to earn a minimum amount of what Social Security considers work credits, the equivalent of a quarter of full-time work is the kind of the lay definition of a work credit. I think it's 20 work credits, so the equivalent of 5 years of work in order to have disability insurance coverage. And just like an insurance program, when you stop paying into your car insurance, your rental insurance, or in this case, your disability insurance for Social Security, at some point, your coverage ends. For Social Security disability insurance, that coverage ends 5 years, typically 5 years after you stop working. That means you have to prove that your disability started within that 5-year window of when you stopped working. That is what they call the date last insured, the date that you last have SSDI coverage. It doesn't mean that you stop getting benefits if you are past that 5-year mark, but as long as you are able to prove your disability began and persisted within 5 years of when you stopped working. So that's an important factor. When you file for disability, you have to tell them, when do you believe you became disabled? That translates to your alleged onset date of disability, or AOD for short. It's if you put your alleged onset date of disability for after your date last insured, basically saying I became disabled 7 or 8 years after I stopped working, then you will not be entitled to SSDI.
Right. And we'll see that from time to time where we meet folks who may have worked, 8, 9, 10 years ago, is when they last consistently paid into Social Security. They're not aware of what their date last insured is. And we're working with them to trying to figure out what's their alleged onset date. And, they'll give, and they don't know. So their alleged onset date may be after their date last insured. And therefore, Social Security will instantly deny it because you're alleging disability after your date last insured. And if you do that, then the only other programs you're eligible for are Title 16 potentially, and that's if you meet the financial criteria. So,
Right.
So the number one piece of advice I give to folks is, especially if you're applying on your own or you're only Title II eligible, is to go create a myssa.gov account, and hopefully you can find your date last insured in there. If not, pick up the phone and call Social Security and ask them, hey, can you look at and see what my date last insured is? Because if your date, and a lot of folks, their date last insured is into the future, by the way, but if your date last insured is in the past and you want to try to go for Title II benefits, your alleged onset date has to be before your date last insured expired. And so that's, we see that, not common, but it definitely comes up from time to time where we'll meet a client and they've already applied and we've taken on their case, and, you read the denial and you're saying, hey, you're alleging disability after your date last insured, so denied. They won't even order medical records. They'll just instantly deny you. So,
but very related to that, would be the putting an alleged onset date for before you stopped working. Kind of related to the second point about working is if you allege that you became disabled while you're still earning income above that SGA limit, again in 2024, $1,550, your case will also be denied because Social Security will see those earnings and go to that black and white rule. You made too much money to apply for disability. So getting legal advice on the alleged onset date is super important, in my opinion, so that you don't take your case from the get-go by setting an alleged onset date that is either too far in the past or too recent, and not considering all of these factors for how important the alleged onset date is from the very start. It's like one of the first questions they'll ask you on a disability application.
Right. Well done. It's not always easy to explain. AOD, DLI, Title II to folks where it's easily digestible. So well done. So what is the number 7 thing? And this is the one that drives me personally crazy with clients. But what's the number 7 thing that you see?
Yeah, completing Social Security forms. The importance of completing the forms that Social Security asks you to complete. Social Security can deny your case for non-compliance, and that includes when they send a questionnaire that oftentimes asks you, "Hey, what was your work history? What did you do in your previous jobs? How much did you make?" They'll also ask about your day-to-day activities in a form called the Adult Function Report, which is our number one most watched video on our YouTube channel. Is advice on completing the Adult Function Report. If I get it. I'm with our clients and with folks with disabilities. It can be a stressor to get all of these questionnaires, and it feels like Social Security is just piling on all of this work, when what we're trying to tell them is that working is severely difficult to the point of impossible. And yet there's all of these things Social Security needs you to do in order to proceed with your disability case. So it is very important that if Social Security sends you a form, whether it's something that you just need to sign and send them back to them, because that'll come up, or they're asking you to fill out a 6 to 8 page questionnaire about your health, all of these things are important for you to fill out. The good news is if you need an extension on a form, in my experience, thankfully, most Social Security agents I speak with are very reasonable and will extend the deadline. They know that it says like you have 10 days to complete this form from the date of the letter, but you got the letter like 5 days after it was dated. The agent will understand that you may need another 2 weeks to fill out the form and get it back to them. But just be in contact so that they know, okay, this person is diligent. They didn't just chuck the form into their recycling bin or set it aside and it's gone. But please work on the form. If you have hired a law firm and need legal advice on the forms, pick up the phone. If you don't have a law firm, you can at least watch our YouTube videos and get some advice. But ultimately, not completing Social Security forms can derail your case, get it denied, and that would be a shame for the case to be denied over paperwork that didn't get completed.
Yeah, and I want to be very clear to folks who may not understand kind of what we're saying here, is that they'll deny you for not completing the form and not, I repeat, and not make a medical determination. So you'll get a denial saying, hey, you didn't fill out whatever form, the work history, adult function, whatever form. Okay. And then you appeal that. You're only appealing the fact that you say, I did fill out the form. And I've seen, and this is the part that drives me crazy, I've seen cases go all the way to a judge and say, why are we here? Just have your client fill out the form. So the case has gone 3 years to get to a judge. And then the client fills out the form because maybe we lost contact or they didn't keep in contact or whatever. And then we get the form in, then the judge remands it back all the way to the application. Okay, here's your work history form. And now they get to make a medical determination. And you get to go through that process again. What should have taken you, and I get it. I agree. These forms are crazy on how long they can take to fill out. But you don't want to be denied for that reason.
Yeah.
You want a medical determination on your case. The other thing, too, is, clients will often come to our firm and be like, well, I hired you. You fill out the form, right? But it's asking for information we don't know. I don't know if you garden. I don't know if, and that's the type of questions they're asking. I don't know if you have childcare. I don't know if you have pets. I don't know how, special accommodations for that. I don't know your work history. So, but we can help you fill that out. And like you said, I've created a ton of videos on the most popular forms to fill out, and give directions and some guidance on. So, no, it's great. It drives me crazy when people are denied for lack of filling out forms. And it drives me crazy that Social Security says, hey, you have 10 days to fill it out, and you get it 5 days after. You actually receive the form 5 days after the 10 days. So what is the number 8 thing? Kind of, related, I guess, in some levels. But what's the number 8?
So as I was saying earlier about like Social Security forms, you can negotiate the deadline on that. There's one where it's extremely difficult, where that deadline is extremely serious, and missing this deadline is a heartbreak and a headache to do. That's missing an appeal deadline. So I think a lot of people are aware when you apply for Social Security disability, you're more than likely going to get at least one denial. And you need to file an appeal on that denial. Well, you have 60 days from the date that you received the decision, and Social Security assumes that you will receive their decision within 5 days of when they issue the date on the top right corner of the form. But if you miss that 60-day deadline to file an appeal, my gosh, it can derail a case. It can get it dismissed. And a heartbreaking number of clients are folks who come to us saying, I applied on my own. I didn't know what I was doing. I think I got denied and didn't file an appeal on time. Or even worse is, I think I filed an appeal on time. We call Social Security and they say, no, we don't see an appeal. Maybe the person did file an appeal, but they didn't have the receipt. Social Security lost their appeal, and now the proof doesn't exist that the appeal was filed on time. So it's such an important bureaucratic step that frustrates me if folks are punished for missing an appeal deadline when they have a disability. Why I think it's so important. It's not one of the glamorous part about hiring a law firm, but we take care of things like that, of filing your appeal on time, because when it doesn't get filed, it's a very heartbreaking reason to see a case fail, potentially get dismissed and force the person to start over. They may lose out on back pay. They may lose out on entire disability programs because a single form was not filed on time, and Social Security is being very hard-nosed on you missed this appeal deadline. I'm sorry, your case is over.
Yeah, I want to emphasize what you just said. It is really, really important to file an appeal within that 60, 65-day window, and your denial will outline what kind of appeal to file. So just read your denial closely, because it says, you need to file a request for reconsideration if you disagree, or a request for a hearing, or the appeals council request for hearing review, and you need to file that within the timely manner. So I want to emphasize that, because it can really create more work if you don't.
Yeah.
However, there are exceptions, right? And we could probably do another podcast on all the different exceptions. There's a good cause exception, and there's legal rules on what is good cause. And there's also the reopening of a prior application within 1 year of the denial. But all of that delays too, because then you have to wait for an agent. Is this good cause or not? And that could extend your case. What should have been just normal course. You file the appeal, you hear back within 4 to 6 months or 6 months at recon, let's say. Now you're filing an appeal. You may wait another 4 to 6 months for them to decide if there's good cause. And if there's not, then you're going to start all over. And if there is, then they make a medical determination. So it all just delays your case in a lot of ways for this simple document. And to your point, it's one of the things with, whether you're hiring a law firm or a non-attorney rep or whoever, keep receipts. If you are filing your appeal online, and make sure you print that receipt, you store it in a safe place, because if they lose your appeal, you're going to need to prove that you filed it, and they're not going to just take your word for it.
Right.
What is, and very closely related to this, what is the number 9 thing that kind of people misstep in their case?
Number 9, and again, it happens for folks who aren't properly legally counseled. When you get a denial, in the denial letter, it'll say you have the right to file an appeal or you have the right to start a new application. And it does not advise you one way or the other. And you could talk to a Social Security agent and they may not tell you, but we certainly would. It is to your advantage to file an appeal 99% of the time. There may be rare exceptions, but you should file an appeal, or we'll file the appeal for you, rather than to start over with a new application. If you start over with a new application, you're going back to square one. You're back to the level where you are most likely going to get a denial, and you may be, again, giving up benefits, giving up entire disability programs by not filing an appeal and instead starting a new application. There may be, like 1% of the time, it does make sense to start a new application, but my advice would be to get some counsel about your options, so that am I doing the smart thing for my disability claim by either filing an appeal or starting a new claim? If you don't have that counsel, you may be shooting yourself in the foot and perpetually start filing claims again and again, not going anywhere, and losing out on your disability benefits.
So twofold, just points I want to make. Statistically speaking, just from Social Security's own stats, your best chance of winning is in front of a judge. That's where the majority of cases are actually won. You don't get in front of a judge if you just keep reapplying, because all you'll ever get is that agent, because it's a new application, right? So to get to a judge, you have to appeal at reconsideration. And then if you get denied there, you have to appeal and request for a hearing. Okay. That's the only way you get to a judge. The other thing is, it's really important to know the furthest they'll pay you back on Title 16 cases is to the filing date, not your, original application filing date, but on the filing date that's in front of them. So if you're just refiling over years, it's that one application that's in front of them. The second part of that is, if it's a Title II case, the furthest they'll pay you back is 12 months prior to that filing date, and add the 5-month waiting period onto that, which, I don't want to confuse everyone. But it's really important because res judicata kicks in, and then your case is closed all the way back because it's a final determination, and you can't argue that you became disabled prior to the last application denial. So if you're just reapplying every 6 months and you get denied, and let's say you start a new application, you can only allege you became disabled within the last, whatever the date of the denial was, if that makes sense. So that's really important. There's a 10th thing, and I know you have to go to a meeting, and I'm just going to address it real quick. And it kind of came to me while we were talking about, childcare, education, and volunteering. So we were finally able to get to a top 10 list. Our top 10, number 10 thing is this idea of traveling. I've seen a lot of judges ask clients about traveling, whether it's overseas on a plane, in a long car ride. And the reason they ask about it is because, like, they'll ask, how long can you sit? And if you say, I can only sit for 20 minutes, well, how'd you sit on the plane for 3 hours or 8 hours or 2 hours? How were you able to drive to the beach for 2 hours or 1 hour or drive to the mountains? If you say you can't walk very far, more than 2 blocks, how are you able to go camping on that vacation and set up a tent and be with your family? I've seen people talk about hunting, right? Like, I'm disabled, I went hunting, and judges grill them. They, how were you able to do hunting? And it's not about hiding those things. It's being about preparing yourself to answer those questions. Because if you're not prepared, it can really hurt your case, right? But I've seen guys say, oh, I have a disabled hunting permit. Here it is. I can hunt from my vehicle. I always go with family and friends because I can't pack out deer. When I went to Las Vegas, I was in the hotel for 2 days after we got there because I was in so much pain after the flight. I was able to walk around on the flight. In the car, we pulled over every 20 minutes so I could get up and stretch. So it's as long as you're prepared, and it's got to be the truth. I'm not like, there's these magic answers that are untrue. All the truth, right? But travel comes up, and what's crazy is your doctors will take note of it, right? Like,
yeah,
client went to Europe.
Yeah.
I went hunting, and you see those in the medical records, and that's where they pull it from. The judge the judge is reading, the vast majority of judges are reading your medical records pretty closely. And so they get an insight into your life because your doctors, if you tell your doctor, like, oh yeah, I went on a hunting trip and it was, a lot of pain, then a judge is going to ask that. So Mervin, I know you got to go. I'm so grateful for your time today, walking us through. We did make a top 10 list, the top 10 ways that people can screw up their case. So I'm grateful to you and always appreciate our time together.
Thank you.